how can I adjust my communication style to have the people feel what I want them to feel? It's all about those first moments of engagement with people and my vocal tone and how I can set the scene for learning.
Like, it takes a lot to be able to compliment somebody.
Yeah.
And so many people are really struggling with taking in compliments.
How can I bring the value of the skills that I've acquired and translate that into something new? I used to be an opera singer. No, I'm someone who understands body language, performance, who can use my voice in a variety of ways and can get to the essence of helping people to feel something. For anybody who's planning their business or trying to find their brand right now and their spark, as is your podcast, it's like, well, what is that thing that lights up others? What pain points do you solve for other people? And I want to empower you to take responsibility for your communication. That's what I feel that I really get to do. It's almost, that is my noble goal.
We are often just one spark away from thinking differently. This is the space where personal and professional growth meet, because you cannot truly level up one without the other. Instead of adding to the information overload, we're delivering practical sparks for your day-to-day routine. We're bringing you the exact strategies used by elite coaches and consultants who guide global corporations, top executives, and high performers to master their emotional intelligence and leadership without burning out.
David, welcome to One Spark Away. Thank you for accepting today's challenge to join us. You have quite a story, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to dive a little bit deeper into it. So from Australia, from more specifically being a professional opera singer in Australia at the super famous Australia Opera House, to Austria, being a university teacher and a communication coach. That's definitely quite a story. But before we dive into that, David, how are you feeling today? How are you coming into our conversation? And I would love to invite you to grab our emotion cards, which you well know, and let us know how you are checking in today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, of course, to speak with you and to have this time together. I think if I look at the cards quickly, I'm probably feeling mainly this particular emotion here, which I would describe as perhaps calm but excited, and at the same time feeling energized.
Energy.
To help your listeners and to your viewership to create something, interesting for them, or to be of an example if that's something that you're interested in.
Oh, we love that. Definitely. Leading by example, that's definitely something we should do more, I think, in our lives.
Yeah.
Stepping up into our authentic self and really embracing leadership as an example.
Absolutely.
Thanks for bringing that up, David.
Cool.
So you have a lot of hats in your professional and personal life. Would you dive a little bit deeper into that?
So as you mentioned, when I was 23, I discovered I could sing. And by 26, I realized, I became a professional opera singer at the Sydney Opera House, firstly in the chorus, and then moved on to becoming a soloist with Opera Australia. Then when my wife and I, she's also an opera singer. So when I was 35, about 11 years ago, we moved to Europe with our two kids. And so that was the moment to transition back into the corporate world. I'd been in the corporate world a little bit in my early 20s, and then transitioned into opera. And then when we arrived here, I did my master's in human resources and realized, okay, let's pivot again, and became a corporate language coach and was working in lots of organizations across Vienna and Austria and across Europe, and started to see some trends and some ideas that perhaps could be further enhanced through extra studies. And that's when I took up studies in emotional intelligence. And then from there, looking more at the way in which we communicate together. And so I started my own business, and I was able to then sort of mix and marry that. At the same time, I had a few opportunities to become a university lecturer, firstly through teaching body language in a corporate communications bachelor in their first year. So really setting people up with good presentation skills. And then at the same time, another university where I am now full-time, they asked me to come and teach presenting in English as well, which led on to teaching team building, leadership topics and now business communication predominantly across 6 different programs. So that's sort of the short version of my journey so far. And from here, I'm really looking at now a PhD and seeing whether I can further enhance my academic career. But I still maintain my coaching status as an ICF coach and my work in emotional intelligence with the organization 6 Seconds, where I'm a network leader now as well, having been a staff member, and that's where we met. But from that, I've now taken a step back. I'm still a network leader and able to mix then my full-time professional work at the university with some consulting for companies, with leaders, with perhaps those in organizations who are facing challenges or would like to enhance their communication style and their emotional intelligence.
So you're basically combining everything that you've learned throughout your life and packing it or wrapping it up into consulting, teaching, right?
Absolutely.
That's quite impressive.
And when I first pivoted from opera, I spent a couple of years kind of wandering in the wilderness, you might say, thinking about, where am I going to go? And it was actually a wonderful moment I had with my father-in-law, who sat down and said, all right, well, your wife, Margaret, is now settled into her job. She's at the Wiener Staatsoper. And what about you? What are you going to do? And I thought, well, I'm going to do my master's. And he said, well, what you need to do is understand that you have this incredible resume with all the opera roles that you've done, with the sort of status of your opera. You can pivot and help executives. He was an executive himself. He said you could help people in these big, Fortune 500 companies or these big 4 type, consultancies or banks or whatever. Go in there and really try to see if you can make a difference. And so that was sort of the seed, you could say, that was planted in me. And then it probably took 5 years in living here for me to find my way there. So through corporate English coaching, then into further opportunities in maybe intercultural intelligence or leadership workshops, vocal workshops. So now my clients are asking for, a combination of emotional intelligence for leaders with some communication, styling, and body language kind of work as well.
Yeah, they work hand in hand in the end, right? The way you're communicating and the way you're showing up, it's basically...
Yeah. And there's still things that I'm teaching people that I can trace back to opera. Like I learnt that from a mentor or a teacher or someone in my past. So nothing feels lost now. And I think that's an important part for anyone who's pivoting in their careers or thinking about what's my next challenge, either in a corporate capacity or in a non-corporate capacity, if they wanted to start something on the side, like a podcast or a cafe, or they wanted to volunteer in some way. How can I bring the value of the skills that I've acquired and translate that into something new? I think that's really the key thing to remember. And that's where you need a coach. That's where I help people as well, with a little bit of career coaching from time to time, helping them to see this is your value. This is how you're showing up. And how can you now translate that into something new? So it's not just going with titles like, I used to be an opera singer. No, I'm someone who understands body language, performance, who can use my voice in a variety of ways and can get to the essence of helping people to feel something through their emotions. That comes from opera.
So it's basically with each job that you're having, you gather a set of skills, but you just need to understand what those skills are and how to leverage them further on into your professional and also personal development. Right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, 100%.
That's so cool, because that's like exactly the flip of I'm not necessarily only that as a label, but it's like this is the baggage that I'm coming with, and this is actually my competitive advantage.
Yes. Yeah. And that toolkit of skills.
Yeah.
So some of it's baggage, as you say, where you might say, well, I really didn't like doing this, and that kind of task or responsibility. So there were many things in opera where I thought, I'm not really using all of my gifts here. A quick example would be I was often playing smaller roles and covering bigger roles. And so sometimes I would have a 3-hour call from 10 to 1, and I'd sit there for 2 hours and 50 minutes. Waiting, sort of, will the director call me in at this point? Waiting sometimes for that time, 10 minutes towards the end. Okay, now we'll get to your scene. Other times we were very busy, but there were a lot of sitting around moments where I thought, is this my life? Is this what I want? Do I want to look back after a career and go, I had 40 years of singing maybe, but how much of that was really spent, doing things that could make a difference to people and to myself ultimately. But it's about taking the bits that you enjoy, and then saying, right, how do I turn that into something more?
Thank you for sharing, David. It's really impressive. So you're coming from Australia, right? Which is a quite different culture than we are having here. So while I was preparing for the podcast, I was like, okay, how do you put Australia like in words? And then I was like, okay, it's a culture of no worries, mate, right? That's how you say, no worries, mate. We will figure it out. And then you come to Austria, to Vienna, where we are having a lot of titles and structure, right? So how was this transition for you, and how did emotional intelligence also support you with this transition?
I would say that the transition is ongoing.
Yeah.
So even after 11 years of living in Austria, there are still moments, probably each week, where I go, ooh, that feels like a cultural clash, or that's something that I need to pay attention to. Oh, or look how much I've become more Austrian than Australian. And so, as you say, no worries, mate, is really give it a go. Let's just get our sort of hands dirty and get on with it kind of attitude. And that's wonderful. And we care less about titles in Australia, for sure, as you mentioned before. But also, people are much more open or friendly. And what it is about, I've learned through my work, it's the speed of trust, you might consider it. So in Australia, I could meet you through a friend or whatever at the pub or in a social gathering and feel like after the end of that session, hey, let's exchange numbers and keep hanging out. And maybe we do, but maybe we don't. But I give you that impression that I'm open and trusting you to create that connection.
Right.
Whereas here, I've worked out that perhaps people it's not that they don't trust, it's just that in the beginning, there's a bit more of that distance, and then they sort of edge closer, maybe through a mutual friend or this. I was made aware of this vitamin relationship that's really important. And so if I trust you as my friend and then you introduce me to someone, I can trust that person because of that triangle. That exists in Australia as well, don't get me wrong, but people are perhaps, we're perceived as friendly because it's in the social circles or the non-formal moments. So I saw a TikTok recently by a guy in Melbourne saying it was almost un-Australian to be at the tram stop and not have a quick conversation about the weather, about the delay of the tram, or about something sort of inconsequential. And so what that means is that it's very fine if people go to Australia to sort of look at someone and go, oh, God, it's so hot, isn't it? And then, yeah, it's really hot. Gosh, I hope I can get to the beach later or whatever. Yeah, cheers. And then that's it. There's no more expectation. Austrian people don't do that.
No.
So if you're at the tram stop and you were to approach someone and say, gosh, the tram is delayed by 3 minutes in Vienna, which is unheard of, because it's very efficient. People would look at you like you're weird. So you don't have that sort of small talk moment. As a result, that's actually one of the areas where when I'm teaching intercultural communication or just helping people to internationalize themselves as Austrians, often saying, we need to small talk. And then people say, oh, what do I talk about? And they feel very panicked. Yeah. Well, there's a range of topics. And yes, weather or politics or maybe just the state of the tram situation are beginnings. But it could be some really interesting questions like, what's your book about if someone were reading something? Right. Or can you recommend me a new magazine? Maybe someone's holding a magazine or a newspaper. Or even, going up and complimenting someone. So my wife loves to walk up to women with nice hair or something saying, wow, can I just say that your hair and outfit today is really beautiful.
That's so cool.
And you see people go, when they get over this person's not sort of trying to ask me for money or something, they'll actually go, oh, thank you. And another thing that I do regularly is that if I'm served by someone who's sharing a name tag, and if it has their first name on it, then I'll use it. So yesterday I was in Starbucks meeting a friend, and it said Kitty. So she gave me my double espresso, and I said, thanks, Kitty.
Yeah.
And I could see her go,
oh my God.
And so you can make someone's day by making that small difference. Right. And I think that's where I can bring an Australian charm to Austria, but also recognizing that's not for every moment. So if the person's name says Frau such and such, then I'm probably less likely to use that because it seems like maybe this is a more formal environment. And I don't want to get someone's name wrong either. So if you can't pronounce the name or understand their name, then just don't use it. But maybe a smile goes a long way and a pleasant greeting. And so I think this for me is one of those keys about living here. And so over time, living in Austria, I've also, respecting culture. I'm not walking up to people and asking them how the weather's going. I really began to integrate in that sense. Early on with our kids, we would be on a tram or a train, bus, and we invented this small idea of VV, stands for Vienna voice. Because what we recognized on public transport, say in Vienna, it's very quiet.
Right.
So you wouldn't get on and start yelling. So we would say, right, we're going to speak quietly now. And we can use our Vienna voice. So we can talk. But, and the kids were young enough where they might have wanted a snack or something like that. So we might say, well, we're just going to wait till we get off the tram. Then I can give you the snack. But not yelling at at a loud tone. So now, we all respect that because that's the way it should be. And so we see the tourists, we hear them. Oh my goodness, you can tell that people are not from here when they're not interacting in that way. So a few small things there, that can help us to. And I think it's about using your eyes and your ears to recognize what's happening around you, and then adjusting. And I know that I've made the adjustment because when we go back to Australia, I often find it very loud and noisy on public transport, for instance, or if someone approaches me, I'm thinking, what do you want?
What do you want? Yeah, exactly.
So I know that I'm perhaps preferring an Austrian culture now than an Australian one.
Right. I had a kind of a similar feeling during my travels now in Southeast Asia. I was in the beginning like, oh my God, everything is so loud everywhere,
Yeah.
But then you get adjusted to that too. And then
Absolutely.
coming back here, it was like, oh, silencio. Wow.
Yeah.
But I really loved everything that you said, and especially the approach that your wife has towards people. I think we could just do one episode on that because I think it's like it takes a lot to be able to compliment somebody.
Yeah.
And so many people are really struggling with taking in compliments. And that's really, like giving it from the heart, coming back to our hard topics, right?
Yeah.
Like being able to just see people around you for who they are, to name them. It's also something that I was practicing in Southeast Asia because, like people are kind and nice to you. Like why not give it back?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it really hit home.
Yeah.
Speaking about leading by example, also what you are doing with your kids with the VV,
Yes.
Vienna voice.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Like I think that's something that more parents can maybe take in and try out. Maybe it's something that would work for them too, especially if they are struggling with bringing their kids into a calmer state when it comes to public spaces.
Yeah.
That's really, really nice.
Yeah. It's the same with dogs. We have a dog as well. So
it works with him too.
Well, not Vienna voice for her, but certainly the point is more like the rules. There's unwritten rules. That's probably the biggest adjustment that we had to make to being in Austria, and maybe any culture. As you said, if you're in Southeast Asia recently, it's like, what are the rules here? And there's no like welcome to Vienna as a foreigner guide. But in that, it would be good if it did say, on public transport, we're quiet, or have your dog on a lead most of the time. So you don't let your dog off the lead, or bring a bicycle for the dog on public transport. So one time we were just going from one tram stop to the other close to home, but we'd forgotten the bicycle and it cost us €60 on the spot as a fine.
Wow.
So you recognize, people get fined all the time for even small things. So we're a rule-abiding country in Austria. Australia is very not rule-abiding in some senses. I think there are rules, of course, you don't run red lights, but you wouldn't necessarily get an immediate on-the-spot, you must pay me fine for someone, for a small kind of offense. Maybe a warning, like, look, next time, please remember your bicycle for your dog. It's important. But here, no, there's no second chance. It's you didn't know the rule, you failed, and here is your fine. So in some ways, you have to be responsible for learning the rules. Right. And I think that's probably a big difference for people who do want to settle in. We need to integrate. We need to find the way in which to approach. And so that's why I said sometimes maybe on a weekly basis, I still find maybe there's an Australian way that I had that is challenged by the ways of being in Austria. So many things I've adapted and some things I maybe choose not to adapt to as well. But that's where I bring my personality or my own culture.
Thinking a little bit about emotional intelligence and the journey that you've had with transitioning here and with emotional intelligence itself. What was your turning point? When did you realize that emotional intelligence is really something that is supporting you on a daily basis, and it's something that you actually need to integrate into your life on a daily basis. So it's not just something that you're teaching and you've been learning and you're teaching, but it's something that you really need to practice, right?
Yeah. It was actually really early on. So I started my master's. It was probably 2016. I realized that I could do well as a presentation skills coach. So teaching people body language, I had some opportunities that I mentioned before with the university. I'd started in corporate teaching English. People were enjoying this. But I was then thinking, well, okay, what's in my toolkit? Do I have enough? And I didn't at the time feel that I had enough because I wasn't yet fully seeing the way in which, I could translate everything from stage into this corporate work. So I was thinking about, I originally studied psychology when I left school. And so I was thinking, well, what could I do that what did I remember from psychology that was interesting? And it was emotional intelligence, because it was around the time that Daniel Goleman's book came out, when it became a kind of popular thing sort of in the late 90s into the 2000s. And so I thought, well, yeah, emotional intelligence, that makes sense, because in opera, we are emoting and sharing things. Now, the biggest thing I learned in the opera was that I didn't have to fully feel all the feelings, but I had to inspire those feelings in you.
Right.
So if I'm singing a scene, maybe I'm supposed to be thinking about love scene with somebody or whatever, or, it's the romantic scene, because I was a tenor, so I was often in those sort of roles. Now, maybe I could look at my counterpart and think, well, do I can't fall in love with her, but I have to generate some feelings of love. Now, maybe that could be love, and then have the director go, oh, that's it. Uh-huh. So I could be thinking about loving bike riding, which I do, and the director would go, that's it. And that scene translates to the audience as I'm in love with the woman, or in this love scene, right? But it wouldn't have to be that I have to feel the love, because sometimes if I, was playing opposite someone, it wasn't translating to the audience. So emotions, therefore, are center in the opera. That's what you go to experience when you go to a film or to the opera or any kind of theater. But what I love about opera is it's sort of the original multimedia. There's music, drama, there's action, there's acting, all coming together, with these often tragic stories full of emotion. So I was actually, the shortest story, I'll try and be quick here, but was with, I met many Australians. We all find each other. Australians find Australians. So I took a lady to coffee who was in HR. She's still a very good and close friend of mine now. And we were in Mariahilferstrasse in Freiraum. And I was saying, I want to maybe reconnect with emotional intelligence in some way. Or I remember the book, and, I think this could be a bit of a calling. And 2 tables over was a guy who overheard our conversation as we were speaking. And before he left, he said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, and I don't mean to intervene, but I heard you speaking about emotional intelligence. If you'd like to talk, here's my business card, and we could connect. I run a consultancy in Linz, but I'm just down here for the day, and I'd be happy to have a chat with you. Eric Platzer was his name, and he ran this consultancy. And I got in touch with him, and he said, I run this tool, something like the EQ 2.0 or EQI, or this assessment tool. And he said, there's a conference coming up in Salzburg, and it's at the FH Salzburg, and I have a competition for a ticket. Enter the competition. So I entered the competition. Oh, I won the competition. So my ticket to Salzburg was paid for. So I organized my accommodation. And it was at the conference there that not only was I able to, connect more with Eric, but I also met Maria Olsen from 6 Seconds. And that started my journey with 6 Seconds. So the following year, I enrolled in their practitioner program. It was in London with Joshua Friedman, the CEO, running the program. So I got to sort of go straight to the top, in the sense of meeting the pioneers of 6 Seconds. And he's one of the founders, you see. Right. And that started my journey. So I did their practitioner program, which included the Brain Profile series. And then I stayed and started as a network leader. And then after 3 years, this was during COVID, the European team then said to me, David, we'd like to offer you to come and work with us, in a paid position. This is how it could work. Right. So I started as the business advisor. So it was sort of like a business corporate sales type role. And Then after a year or so, Italy and Europe were amalgamated into one. So I transitioned then into being a facilitator of all of our courses at 6 Seconds in English. And then that, led on to more work and development. But then my work at the university started to take off and I had to make a choice. Do I go full-time with the university or do I continue on in this sort of collaborative capacity with 6 Seconds? And so due to personal circumstances, I thought, well, let's go with the full-time and at the university. And then I could, then go back now to being a network leader with 6 Seconds. So that was my journey into EQ.
Yeah.
I no longer have as much contact with the original guy, Eric, but it was like place and time, right moment where I could meet him. And that sort of really opened my eyes to the point being, okay, now here's something that I can tap then into my operatic work. So, there's a connection there. So my original studies in psychology around emotion, then into my work as an opera singer, now, then into this corporate work as well. And it was a nice adjunct in the world of communication because I'd also observed that for 8 years of language coaching, I'd go into a corporate banking situation, for instance, or into a large pharmaceutical company. Let's say I had 20 lessons with people. I'd go every week for an hour and a half and we'd have our lesson. Unfortunately, most people learning English who are maybe Austrian or European, maybe they come from Romania or they come from Germany or other places, were filled with such a English must be perfect kind of feeling that they'd come into me and say, they'd be really anxious.
Yeah,
they'd be saying, oh my gosh, I studied English in primary school and then in middle school, but I haven't studied English in 20 years. And so they're looking at me like, tell me I'm okay kind of feeling.
And they're like fully frozen when it comes to
Absolutely.
Speaking, right? 'Cause
Yes,
it's not
and
perfect.
speaking was the least developed skill. So they were used to rote learning and reading and summarizing. And I'd get in there and I'd say, great, tell me about you.
Yeah.
And I'd want to know and I'd want to speak and I'd want to learn because that's how I learned English, in Australia. It's all about communication, all about the spoken word, all about generating trust in each other. And so I realized that's emotional. That's emotional intelligence. So I had to use the skills that I'd learned in the practitioner, in my corporate work and in my university work as well. So when I'd go into a classroom, again, students are maybe some of the degrees I taught in initially were only in English, but with international students. Right. So again, English is not everyone's mother tongue. No. And so you're going, okay, how can I, as the leader, as the lecturer, or as the coach here, put people at ease quickly? And that's where I brought my emotional intelligence, you see, to create the right environment for learning. And a little bit of study in andragogy and hoidagogy reveals that it's all about those initial moments. So I play music at the start of all of my classes. That was something I also picked up from 6 Seconds.
I remember you were doing that during our trainings and I really loved that because on one hand, I think you were also asking us to propose some songs.
Yes.
And then people feel engaged.
Yes.
They can also somehow drop parts of their personality one
Absolutely.
way or another, or their what they love.
Yeah. So music becomes that connection. And it's part of my story.
Totally.
So I choose music that I think will be interesting to the audience. So if I'm going into a lecture now with people who are kind of Gen Z, late millennials, then, it's a certain style of music. And now I'm asking each class, can I have a song? I'm going to add it to my, Hochschule Burgenland playlist.
Cool.
And I see them all go, oh, that's cool. Oh, I get to choose a song. And whatever. And as long as it's, I say, well, what sort of song? Well, as long as it's energetic and maybe it sort of lifts the room a little bit or it creates a mood. So it's really like that mood creation.
Playing with the feelings, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Totally.
And so I'm choosing, positive feelings or recognizing, okay, maybe students have class at 6 o'clock. They've come in from work. A lot of my courses are part-time. So they've been working all day. They've rushed to the campus. They've reached the moment. They sit down. That's not the moment to be like, right, we're now going to do this and listen to me and let's be strict. I don't feel that that's the right environment to create. So even if I don't use music because I'm delayed or something, it's all about those first moments of engagement with people and my vocal tone and how I can set the scene for learning.
Yeah.
Because it's their learning. I'll often used to say to people, I speak English, but I'm here for you and I want to empower you to take responsibility for your communication. That's what I feel that I really get to do. It's almost, that is my noble goal in a sense.
Yeah. So jumping to noble goals, because you were mentioning also before finding somehow your direction and your purpose, right? What is a noble goal? It's coming from the 6 seconds framework, right?
Yes.
So what is a noble goal for people that have never heard the term before?
Yeah. So it's different from, I have a goal to drive a sports car or to have €1 million in the bank or whatever. A noble goal is something that goes beyond yourself. It's really an outward-facing idea. It's a North Star for your life. It's something that you might say is like legacy. It's something that gets you out of bed every day and energizes you. It's an intrinsically motivating kind of idea. And it comes through the 6 seconds framework. It's part of their KCG model, and it's in the give yourself part of that, which means that it's about yourself, but it's what can you give yourself in terms of purpose. So it goes well beyond just let's have a purpose. And I think in the world of coaching and psychology that I'm in now, often people say, oh, just find your purpose.
Yeah.
I'd like to share with your audience that that's a bit of a misnomer. It's like, what's my purpose for now? So when I discovered I could sing, I was like, this is driving me now.
Yeah.
And sure, there were moments where I thought, this is what I'm going to do forever. I'm going to be Pavarotti. I'm going to be Jonas Kaufmann, and I will sing. But that's not how my story went. And then I had to redefine my purpose when I got here at 35. And I was working in language and thinking, well, okay, what's my purpose here?
Right.
And I realized that my purpose involves my voice. It involves sharing something with everybody else. So hence this noble goal idea is really then a statement. It starts with a verb and it has, a sense of empowerment. It helps you to make your decisions. If I say now that my noble goal is to empower people to take responsibility for their communication, that's focused on others, is that something that I can achieve? Probably not in this lifetime. Can I influence this throughout my work life? Yes. And I've chosen the word empower very particularly. I love the way it sounds when I say it. I love the way it feels when people respond to it. So I've used it enough that people then go, oh, and you see the head nod moment and you see the moment where you go, I have them here in the palm of my hand now, like a good song does as well. But my purpose here is not to abuse that. My purpose now is to translate that and sort of pass it on like a seed, like a gift. And so if people can walk away from a coaching or a workshop with me with one or two things that they want to implement in their life, then that's the empowerment. And for them to take the responsibility, that actually came through working with a woman in Australia who I had never met through an academy I belonged to. And she said at the end of the session, wow, David, you've helped me to see that I have to take responsibility for my communication. And it hit me like, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And I had another CEO I worked with here in Austria of a plastics company say to me, could I do sales training? No, not really. Oh, you'd be good at it. No. Do you do stuff in German? No, not really. And he realized, he's like, you're absolutely right, David. What I like about you is that you are an English coach, but I learned so much more from you from our session. So it's not just, how do I conjugate verbs and how do I speak properly, but there's all this other stuff that you bring. And again, so that purpose came through for anybody who's planning their business or trying to find their brand right now and their spark, as is your podcast. It's like, well, what is that thing that lights up others? And I often ask in these kinds of coaching moments, what pain points do you solve for other people? So I solve the pain points of presentation skills, what to do with your hands, how to use your voice, what English words and phrases go well in that situation, especially for people whose English is their second or third language. But add to that, how do you want people to feel when you communicate? And that's the emotional intelligence part. So that all packages into a noble goal in that sense that I chose to say yes to your podcast because I know then that lives up to that idea of sharing this information for people to take away and develop their purpose.
Empowering
others, exactly.
As you said,
so
right?
if you said to me, David, I have a tremendous opportunity for you to perhaps teach this topic or that topic. If it's not aligned to these sort of 3 or 4 areas where I work, then I'm not interested. Even if you would offer me a top fee, because I don't feel like I could bring that credibility to that work. And I think that's the thing. Recognize where you have credibility, where do you bring emotion, and enthusiasm for the topic? And then where can you bring the logic, which is the classic sort of ethos, pathos, logos, trivium from Aristotle, you see? And so if you have all three, then you have kairos, which is saying the right thing in the right place at the right time in the right way, I add, to the right people.
Wow.
And again, this is not something that I just came to all this through all of my experiences.
What was the groundwork that you needed to do? Like for somebody that is, let's say, in a corporate environment and they are struggling a little bit with their life purpose because they might feel that they're not able to find their direction. Like they are kind of stable with their jobs, but they feel like they want to do more, you know, like they feel like they're burning for more.
Yeah.
But they are not able to put it on point, you know, this, what is my noble goal? What is the groundwork that you needed to do so that you can get into having so much clarity? Because I heard like a lot of self-awareness and a lot of clarity in who you are, what you're good at, and what you can gift to the world. So I'm curious, what advice would you give to somebody who is in such a situation right now and would love to find out their noble goal?
Yeah. I would say get a blank piece of paper. Make it as big as you need. A flip chart piece of paper is probably a good idea. Get your colored pens and markers. And then, as we've discussed today, you know, thinking about what tasks do you like to do from your job already? So we all have, you know, the lists of pluses and minuses. I really like this. So I like that. I like that. So maybe you like, you know, Excel spreadsheets. Great. Maybe you like speaking in front of others. Maybe you like preparing the things that others speak. So whatever that list is, start writing down to the smallest degree. I love making coffee, you know, for my colleagues, or I love bringing cake to our meetings. I love answering questions on the fly rather than preparing something. All these small things. Then ask yourself, what do people ask of you? What kinds of pain points do you solve? Not only in your corporate job, but in your personal life as well. So maybe you have friends that, I used to be mad about cycling. And so I had colleagues at Opera Australia come to me and say, David, I would like to buy a bicycle. Which one would you recommend for me? Right. And so I'd ask them a few questions, sort of coach them a little bit. And then I could say, right, here is the model, because I was obsessed with bike models of the time. And so then they would come back and go, wow, that was a great choice. You know, one guy even came back and said, this bike has lasted me now 10 years. He wrote to me while I was here and said, thank you so much. I now have to retire the bike, but it was the best bike that I've ever had. And it was because, you know, I was obsessed, but I was also a cycling instructor for the city of Sydney as part of when I was still in the opera. I also had this sort of side gig. So I was following my interest in bikes into a sort of job environment. So that might be for your corporate people who are struggling there, is you don't have to give away the job. I've never done that. When I became an opera singer at 23, I was a hobby singer, an amateur singer. So for 2 years, I had my corporate job in a large supermarket chain. I was in research. And then I moved to an outplacement organization at the same time. And I was slowly working up a corporate ladder. But I could see that my options were kind of limited. And so I was singing in my spare time on Sundays and weekends and all through the week. Then there was an opportunity to apply for the Sydney Conservatorium. So I jumped, became my full-time thing. People ought to consider, you know, on this flip chart, what are the things that you've always wanted to do? I love in a coaching when people say, oh, this is going to sound stupid, but it's the diamond.
And that's exactly
that's the diamond moment.
Yeah.
You know, I've always wanted to open a cafe and be a barista.
Right.
Great. Well, go do a coffee course. Like that's the first step. Then, you know, do anything that can then upskill you. So that could include volunteering. I think many people undervalue the purpose of volunteering. I say to young students now, go and volunteer somewhere. Write to someone and say, could I have a summer job, you know, volunteering to do this? You might end up with a job out of it. But people go in, oh, I've got to go through the front door. Most opportunities come through the side door, the back door. That doesn't mean that you're not doing it legally, but what that means is that opportunities come when people trust you, when people understand you, when they see what you bring. And so you have to kind of work out what it is that you bring. Maybe you're the spark of the room. I once had a lady tell me in my master's thesis, she was the social glue at her organization. She worked for one of these big UN type organizations. So she could be the connector.
Yeah.
So now she's probably a business mentor helping, you know, entrepreneurs connect with sources of income. So
cool.
she's got this sort of way to be that. So she recognized that's my special sauce. That's my spark. That's the thing that I do that others don't do so well. So you may need to get feedback from others, because I might think I'm a great communicator, but everyone goes, "Oh, David, actually,
you have other better skills.
You're terrible." Yeah. So go and get feedback from not only those nearest to you, but it's like a 360 that we're all familiar with in corporate. But go and do a 360, and that's where 6 Seconds has some great tools. Get some assessments done. With a coach like yourself. Maybe they could also, take a brain profile, learn a bit more about themselves,
Understand
seek
yourself.
out those people. Do the MBTI, do the free tools that are on the internet that can tell you about your levels of certain skills.
Right.
Not so that you can beat yourself up, but that you can realize, maybe I have some talents here. When I came to Austria, and when we knew we could stay, this was about 5 months in, I joined Toastmasters. And that's a worldwide public speaking organization. That was the big shift that helped me to see that singing and speaking are kind of similar things. The feeling that I got from a good speech, 5 to 7 minutes in Toastmasters, was akin to doing an aria on stage that people would enjoy as part of the opera. And so it's recognizing that, stepping into new situations. So maybe if someone's in a corporate position and they're feeling a bit stuck, well, also make sure your hobbies are there. And that for me was cycling when I was at opera. I was at Opera Australia. It wasn't all going smoothly as I wanted it to, but I had this hobby job. So when I was let go from Opera Australia for 3 months, I was able to do this bike job almost full time. And then we moved, because my wife won a scholarship, we then moved to Austria. Then at that point I could say, right, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay in opera, or do I want to pivot and shift towards something else?
Yeah.
And the original pivot was just because I thought, well, great, I could be a language teacher. So I went and did the CELTA course. It was a short course. So this is the other thing people should look at. Have a look at your LinkedIn profile. How many connections do you have? What's your CV like? And not just your CV, but your LinkedIn profile. Do you need to connect with people? Where is your voice? What could you share that maybe others are not? Or you could bring value to others. So it's not about, how do I find my next position? But I would ask people to think about shifting towards what value can you bring to somebody else today? So that might mean go and volunteer and bring that value.
Right. And I think it's also a lot about dropping the role, as you said, right? Because in order to be able to do that, you need to be able to let go of the fact that you are right now in a leadership position, like I'm the CEO of the company. Okay, but maybe this is not the company that is sparking you. Maybe you're having, like, your heart is somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like being able to drop that, or I'm a business analyst, or I'm a developer, software developer, and that's the label already there, right?
Yeah.
So how to drop the label and to step into your, okay, but what is that thing that would really spark me, and that would get me out of bed each morning.
That's it.
Motivated, intrinsically motivated. I'm not in only for the money, you know, like money is a byproduct. But I'm in for my passion, for the things that I think I can really bring up into the world. I love that. And David, I think you're working, like, while I was listening to you, you know, like I was hearing the questions, a lot of questions that you're asking yourself, or you have been asking yourself throughout the entire process. What is the importance of having or asking yourself questions in the first place? Because it felt like, you know, I'm here, and then what can I do so that I can move forward? And what are my options? And how to, you know, like a little bit of self-coaching, I think it was included in the process, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Take yourself for a coffee. This was something that I learned from one of my, again, master's interviewees, where this woman said, I religiously take myself for a coffee every 2 weeks or whatever it was, time period, where even if someone came in with another offer, no, I have my coffee time or my dinner time. So, and it was really a moment to sort of sit down and self-coach.
Right.
But I'm also, it brings to the thought, the Tony Robbins quote, that we often overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can achieve in 5. And so even in my classes now, I ask people to think, where are you going to be in 5 years? And where are you going to be in 10 years? Not so that people map that out and go, right, that's where I have to be, but knowing then that it takes that level of change to change your identity.
Who do you need to become?
Who do you need to become? So even if maybe you say, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a CEO, that's a long range shot for some people. But it's like, well, okay, how do you shift your identity from here to there? When I was 23 and discovered I could sing, I wasn't an opera singer. And when I moved to Sydney from Melbourne at 25, I was able to create the identity. So people didn't care about David, the guy from Melbourne or whatever. They're like, oh, you're a tenor. Great. And so I could create that new identity. When I shifted here, again, I had to create the corporate coach identity.
Right.
And that took time. That took LinkedIn. That took my website. That took having my branding. And I love now that branding is available. That I've worked with branding photographers who can get you 6 months worth of social media photos and stuff. Great.
Yeah.
Go do it, because they'll help you to see what your new identity is. So if you want to be coach, how does the coach dress? How does the coach look? How does the coach sound? That's where you can come and work with me. How do we work on your language and your purpose? So that when you go to your social occasions, you then have the opportunity not to say, oh, I'm a data analyst. You might be able to use that noble goal and say, well, I'm helping people to empower themselves through their communication.
Yeah.
Now, in that moment, someone could say, what do you mean, David? That's exciting. I can say, well, in this moment, am I a lecturer? Am I a coach? Am I an emotional intelligence professional? Which of my current identities do I want to pick? Now, if you're someone who's in that job, then you're not going to say, well, I'm actually a data analyst at this bank. No. Kick off with that new identity that you want to plant the seed in the mind of others.
Right.
Because that will also help you to have the courage. It's about exposure, to expose yourself to say, this is who I want to be.
Yeah.
And eventually the market catches up. Eventually people catch up. So years ago on LinkedIn, I think I originally had language teacher or something like this, English language teacher. Then in 2017, I said, no, I'm more than that. I'm an executive voice coach. Now, I made that title up. Executive voice coach, because there's executive coaches,
Right.
but I'm an executive voice coach.
Yeah.
And so, I even have a little Lego minifigure on keychain that says EVC that I got at Legoland with my kids years ago. It's still on my keychain now. I've since changed that title, but for years then. So now people come to me and they say, oh, you're the executive voice coach. I said, well, actually, no, now I'm the lecturer.
Yeah.
So on my LinkedIn title, it says lecturer, language and communication coach, because I wanted to broaden out from just voice, and EQ professional, acknowledging this background with emotional intelligence.
Right.
And so I can be multiple things, and that's okay, because I've seen other examples of people and I've framed it the way they've done. So this is the key perhaps for your audience who are facing this challenge or would like to move, is to go and find the examples of who's done it before you. I had coaches that I've looked up to. I've had other mentors over the years. Now, I've read books about people as well. So the mentors don't have to be people that are known. They can be people who have passed, or people who have written a book about themselves or had a book written about themselves. And it's not Steve Jobs and it's these sort of celebrity kind of people. It's people who are 3 to 5 steps ahead of you.
Right.
And that's where LinkedIn is great. So for my younger students, I often say, please go and direct message these people and ask for a digital coffee. And they'll look at me like, I couldn't do that.
God, oh my God.
What do you mean you couldn't do that?
Yeah.
I think, you reached out to me to have this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to support you.
Yeah.
Why? Because I get to, again, feel like I'm tapping into my purpose to share this knowledge that I've received from others. And if it helps, a handful of your viewers to make that change in their life, then the job is done.
Right.
That's great, you know?
That's
and
what I
so
also
people
say.
will help you when you ask.
If one person is touched by this, then my mission is accomplished.
Absolutely.
Right? And our mission now is accomplished.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, but I know, because for me, this is also an exercise of reaching out to people, of being in front of a camera, of speaking in English in front of a camera. Like, there's a lot of things that gather. And I think it takes, I'm a coach, so I think as a coach, you need to be coached.
Yes.
Because else you're not able to coach. So I've been coached myself a lot so that I get into this seat today,
Yes.
Because there's a lot of groundwork that you need to do so that you get into your strength to put yourself out there, especially when it comes to this potential social failure, because that's what our minds are associating being publicly visible with, right?
Yes.
And I think this is what most of people are struggling with right now. Like, can I put myself out there? Yes, okay, but if I do so, then what if I am judged?
Yeah.
And then you get into this spinning roller coaster and you never start.
Of course.
So it's just like starting somewhere, learning by doing.
Yeah.
And as you also said, like, nice people will come along your way, and
Yes.
synchronicities will happen.
They
And
will.
as you also had it in your life with
Yes.
emotional intelligence
Yes.
and meeting the people from 6 seconds and,
Yes.
and your friend back then. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was really cool. And
Yeah.
I think if it's yours, will come. So this is something that I'm really strongly believing in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife says the same thing, that if it's meant for me, it will not pass me by.
Right.
And so, and my grandfather used to say it was about green lights. So these synchronicities are those green light moments.
Right.
Those moments of, like, this is my direction. It became very clear to me in the first couple of years that opera wasn't my direction in this moment. It was almost like a switch was turned off. But suddenly, people were saying, you're an amazing teacher. I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. The first years of language coaching and things, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be seen in this way. But then they were like, actually. So that took me a few more years for then me to feel comfortable with that title or that role, you see?
Right.
But that's the development, because those are where the green lights are. So follow the green lights.
Follow the green light. So David, a couple of questions on voice and leadership, because I think there are so many great leaders that are really struggling with public speaking and with bringing their message across. What is one thing that you would recommend to such a leader to do on a daily basis, maybe, or like to somehow foster their public speaking skills and get their message understood in the room?
They need to understand their communication style. And what that means is how fast do they speak? How much vocal melody are they using? What words are they using? And understand, what does their audience need? So this is the flip. This is where emotional intelligence comes in. We often focus on, leaders often focus on, what do I want people to know? I want to issue the quarterly results. I want to rouse the team. But they also think, my leaders roused me in this way. So they yelled at me, or they commanded me, or they cajoled me, or whatever. They had the carrot and stick mentality. But I don't think most people respond to that these days. So they should focus on, how do I want the people I'm talking to feel? To have know and feel kind of together. So when we're focused on that feeling, their communications, this is sort of something that I'm working with. How can I adjust my communication style to have the people feel what I want them to feel?
Right.
So do you see, a leader might not think that. They think, well, I'm the leader, they should listen to me.
Yeah.
I'd say, but there's a 50-50 shift here. If I'm talking to a group of production employees, they're just going to be thinking, well, here's this guy at the top who's issuing orders. But what if he or she was able to speak in a way that really helps people to feel something, that they know that their part in production is just as important as the top management. So that doesn't come through false words, that comes through action, walking the talk, as well as then speaking that talk, using your voice in a way that can help with that. That might mean using language. It doesn't mean you're throwing in swear words and things like this to reach people, but you're speaking in a way that helps lift them, motivates them to recognize that their role is important. We all want to feel important.
Yeah.
So a leader can make people feel important through their voice, you see, through that communication style. So it could be, in the end, just 10 seconds to think about, who is my audience and what do they want to hear? That doesn't mean I'm changing who I am, but I'm altering my message to therefore reach those people. And then once I have them, they're going to be more likely perhaps to want more. And that may also mean that I have to listen first. This CEO I mentioned before, who told me about me being English plus, he also, when he joined the company, he spent the first 6 months as the CTO, knowing that he would be the CEO once the other guy retired. And he just went around and met everyone, talked to people, got to know them. They got to know him. They didn't know he was going to step into the CEO shoes, but that was his mission. 6 months. He didn't really have work to do, but work was to get to know all the different parts of the organization, the people, and what they needed.
Understanding
and so
the
when he
system.
became CEO, understanding the system, they understood him, he understood them.
Yeah.
And then the first responsibilities that he was able to action were well and truly aligned with the needs of the people. And so the people, he had the people in his hand, and he did some very good things early on in regards to employee fun days or events to really bring people together like in a community.
Right.
And so that was his approach, but it was a great example of, And so I helped him in that time, with his English, but perhaps he was also learning some things that he took into his communication style when working with the various groups of the organization.
And I was reading some statistics on stage fright. So I think 1 in 3 people at least are terrified on being on stage.
Yeah.
So when it comes to public speaking, how would you work with somebody like this? What would be the first step that you would be doing?
The first step is to, in a coaching, they just stand up in front of me. And so, okay, go, do it. And then slowly we start to help them to see that it's not a huge issue.
Yeah.
I've come to understand that the stage fright is really about the first 10 seconds of a speech. Working with enough people now, I recognize it's the first 10 seconds. And of course, it's the lead up to the 10 seconds. So we talk about in the lead up, breath technique, posture, the way you're standing, you're getting the energy flowing, listening to music that you might choose to uplift you if that's what you want. Recognize the emotions that you want to feel. So your emotion cards could be very helpful. I want to have that. Recognizing we could have mixed emotions. So of course I could feel nervous, but I could feel excited as well. In measure. And I love the new idea from Joshua Friedman around emotional wisdom is this idea of, it's like a blender.
Yeah.
In a blender, we put in some fruit. So all the different pieces of fruit might be a bigger piece, a smaller piece, just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So I can have a little bit of emotions in the same way.
Yeah.
So that all leads up to, what's that blend like as we then go in? But then I also work with people to help frame the first 10 seconds. So in most of my workshops, keynotes and things like this, I will start with a question. I will get some sort of audience interaction straight up.
So that you can, as a speaker, also calm down in the meantime. You get the 10 seconds.
Well, it's not even to calm down. It's to recognize that it's not about me, it's about them. So let's get them involved, engaged.
Yeah.
So if I can engage people, so that could be a question, a story, a quote, or something that's going to, or even an activity. Give each other a high five or greet the person next to you. What did you say? How did you do it? Did you feel comfortable greeting a stranger or not? If I say talking about intercultural intelligence. Cultural intelligence. So do something that gets people engaged. Hands up, tell me, and then have people answer a question. So all of these things then relieve that anxiety of it's about me. And if there are, within speech psychology, there are some extra steps that you can take that will also help you to recognize that if you can build the connection in early, that it's not about you, it's about the audience.
Yeah.
You're there to serve them. Now, of course, 20 years of singing also helped me to get over that. Toastmasters also helped me to get over that.
Definitely.
So I also say to people, go to Toastmasters. Go join a Verein or a group where you have to stand up and do stuff. Go join Rotary where you're regularly speaking in front of people.
Right,
In a corporate environment, if you can't do any of that, the next time you go to a corporate meeting, put your hand up and ask a question. If you go to a town hall with the bigger organization, grab the microphone and ask a question. You have to push yourself into those moments. Right. I also had the good fortune when I was at school growing up, I was a trumpeter. And so I was always in the band on the other side. So when you're in the band and you've got 800 students looking at you, you get over that pretty quick. Then I was captain of rowing at school. So every week of the first term, of end of my final year of school, I had to give a speech for 3 to 5 minutes about the rowing results. And we were terrible rowers. And so I had to make the results not just we lost, we lost, we lost, we lost, we lost. So I remember one speech where I talked about the superhuman efforts of our heroic rowers who were valiant in their attempts to win the race. But unfortunately, they did not.
Oh, that's such a nice way to frame it, because then it's like a storytelling.
It was absolute storytelling. I didn't realize it at the time, and I had friends who'd come up and go, "Oh, your speech was stupid," and I go, "Well, you remembered it, didn't you?"
Yeah, right.
And that's what I realized. They remembered it as opposed to the cricket results or the football results where someone would just list off, a list of numbers.
Names.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
So those small moments where I had to walk from one end of the stage in front of 800 people, I probably was shaking a bit. I probably was going through all that. But that exposure at 17, 18 meant that, okay, I can do this. It's not a big deal. But recognizing, what do I want others to feel? That's what I've understood now 30 years later.
Right.
That's how we make people actually feel something. So if a speaker or a person who has to speak in front of others and feels that sense of stage fright, They have to breathe. They have to work on their posture. They have to recognize that tension, but then flip it and find the way to interact and give something to people as soon as possible.
One last question on voices, and then we get into the 5 fire questions that I will ask you to answer quite fast. So short as possible and on point. My last question would be, like, I've seen you working with your voice during your trainings. And why do you do that? How do you do it? And what's the purpose behind it?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've never seen trainers working with their voices during trainings in such an intentional way before. I'm really curious about it. So this is a question for me, more from my curiosity maybe,
Sure,
but maybe somebody might find it useful too.
Yeah. Well, we've all experienced poor speakers, right?
Yeah.
So often they speak in monotone or they speak in one way. So Australians love to upward inflect. So if everything I said sounded like this, like a question, don't you think? Huh? You know, and if I said that after 20 minutes, you'd probably be bored.
Yeah.
And so it's about not being boring and boring people. These days with TikTok and social media, we've got limited time to capture and keep people's attention. So if you think about it, and this a little bit comes from opera, I've been to some modern compositions where it's through composed, which means there's no break. And often there's sort of a motif that runs through an entire opera, and it's exhausting. It's the same in speaking. If you speak in the same way for 2 or 3 hours or for 20 minutes, even 5 minutes, people are going to get bored. And so we need the variety. And the shift in film is like every 6 to 8 seconds.
Yeah.
So the reason to modulate my voice comes also from the ideas of Roger Love, who talked about our 3 directions. I can go up. Hello, I'm David. That sounds energizing and interesting. Hello, I'm David. I sound very serious, and kind of strict. Hello, I'm David in the middle. And so it's simply just playing with that vocal variety. That's something we also learn in Toastmasters. But the techniques come by recognizing what suits the moment. So that's where I am deliberate. When you join my training, hi, how are you? Now, it's not over the top and dramatic, and I'm not dancing and singing in front of you, but it's just trying to engage people, making them feel warm. So in English, that's what I recognize. It's why we're living in Vienna. I have the biggest trouble with Grüß Gott. Grüß Gott. It goes down. So it sounds very serious and unfriendly.
Stiff.
Now, for people visiting Vienna, and I think the people who rate cities around the world are probably visitors or they're asking visitors, then when they receive that, then of course they're going to feel that. And then with the distance and sort of the less friendliness overall, that's why we get that impression. But many Viennese people are wonderful and friendly and open. Guten Tag, hallo, servus. You know, there's lots of words in, say, German that do move up and move down. So for all languages, I'd say, in Romanian's your mother tongue. So what words energize, and maybe it's a certain movement, what words are what direction is serious and what direction is boring. And so if you recognize that, then I say to people, you need a mixture of all 3. So when I'm in my workshops, I'm consciously, well, more unconsciously now, but over the years was recognizing how can I be more deliberate. If I'm delivering a quote for someone else or some numbers, I'm in a monotone. It's like reading a shopping list. If I'm reading multiple items on a page, it's like a shopping list. Whereas if I'm energizing or between sections, I'm going to upward inflect, bring some new life. So that if you're listening to me and you're starting to fall asleep because of my tone, suddenly there's something different.
Right.
Do you see? Yeah. That might be after a certain section. Then when I design my workshops, every 20 minutes, I want you doing something. TED Talks are 18 minutes for that reason. So in Chris Anderson's book, he talks about the fact that people's attention spans are limited. People have probably not much beyond 18 minutes. And now we might argue that it's even shorter. So therefore, it's about, okay, how do we keep that energy moving? How do we keep people engaged, but also learning?
And also, how do you manage to get information to stick? Because you can hear a lot and you can be, let's say you struggle to be present for 18 minutes or for half an hour, but how much of this information really gets to you and sticks with you, right?
That's why I love people who note take.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, that's my one bugbear for the coming generations of people is how are you taking the notes?
Right.
I take notes everywhere, all the time. I have a clipboard, a white plain pieces of white paper. And even if I'm in a corporate meeting, just jotting down what people are saying is showing that engagement, that listening.
Yeah.
So it's also about, if you're in a corporate environment, be a good listener. Show that you are cognizant and listening. And then maybe that helps you to get promoted, or that's a skill that you can tie into that new venture that you're looking towards as well.
Thank you, David, for all your wisdom and knowledge sharing with us.
You're welcome.
Ready for the speed dropping round?
Yes. Quick questions.
Okay,
Here we go.
first question. What is one thing you are still learning today about your own voice?
How far I can push it without exercising. So when I sing in church on Sundays, sometimes I realize I need to do more practice during the week.
Oh,
So I can't just wing it.
What is one thing your voice has allowed you to achieve that your resume never could?
It's allowed me to engage with people in a meaningful way now. Not just from singing, that was nice, but as a communicator, as a speaker, I get to touch people's hearts in a much deeper way.
If you could instantly grant every single one of your university students one EQ superpower, which one would that be?
Intrinsic motivation, so that they would absolutely know why they're there and what they want to get and what they bring to the table.
When you look back at your career years from now, what is the positive ripple effect you hope your voice has created in the hearts of your university students?
The ability for them to communicate well. So I have had some people already write on LinkedIn and say, what you gave to me during that body language class, I just used for my defense and I passed, and thank you so much. I hope that they will recognize that ripple and pass it on to others.
If your voice had the power to instantly unlock the hidden courage inside every single person listening to us right now, what is the final message you want to leave them with?
That they can do it. So if we recognize that each of us has a voice, and our voice is a gift for someone else, because I can talk in my own head. So therefore, what I say, how I say it, and to whom I say it is key. And so if you can share that with that frame of reference, then you will do well.
A bonus question. Why should someone invest time and energy into fostering their emotional intelligence skills?
Because I think this is the one skill that traverses all careers, all situations. Emotions are present always for all of us all the time. And so therefore, the investment in emotional intelligence, both personally and in your profession, will always pay off.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
It's really powerful. Thank you. How are you checking out today with emotion cards?
I'm still feeling this face, but I think that's this one here. But I think we might also feel this one. A little bit of yay. we did it. So yeah, thank you for having me on your program.
Thank you so much, David, for joining and for saying yes and for sharing all this knowledge. It's a lot for people, and I'm really happy to spread it with the world. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Till next time.